The Dean's panel. I'm so excited about this panel. It's a unique opportunity to get to hear from multiple deans of 3 schools at GW. And so this is a great opportunity for the community broadly, and especially for the many students who are attending the summit. So we have 3 deans with us today, and it looks like one just dropped out. Hopefully she'll rejoin. We have Dean Lynn Goldman from the School of Public Health, Dean John Locke from the School of Engineering and Applied Science, and we did have, and hopefully have rejoining us, Dean Dayna Matthew from the Law School. And hopefully she'll join in, but we'll go ahead and get started. In this panel, we're going to be focusing on what GW's approach to sustainability is in the different aspects of what we do at the university. So that's teaching, research, practice, communications, and in particular, how we do that across disciplines, across schools, through the whole university. And so it's going to be great to hear from the individual deans about those aspects of what's going on at the schools, as well as what might they hold in the future and opportunities that we have for students. So GW is addressing sustainability by preparing future leaders, by conducting research at the university, and leading by example, the things that we do as a university, as a campus. And so the question I'd like to pose first to the panelists is, are we doing enough? And what more could we be doing? So I'm going to start off. I'd love to hear from all 3 panelists for that. And I see that Dean Matthews joined us, so we'll be able to hear from all 3 panelists. I'm going to start off by going to Dean Goldman from the School of Public Health to respond to that.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for holding this symposium. Well, the answer, of course, is that we're not doing enough, but we are doing a lot, but we need to do a lot more. You know, when you think about the sustainable development agenda, there's an obvious connection for the School of Public Health, which is the 3rd goal, good health and well-being, right? And that certainly is embedded in everything we do. But when I think about it, so many of the other goals are actually connected to that, because you can't have good health and well-being without addressing the social determinants of health. So you go to goal number 1, ending poverty, and goal number 2, ending hunger, and goal number 4, providing a quality education. All of those things are involved in, what's called the social determinants. You also aren't going to have that without gender equality. We know that if women aren't equal and women aren't healthy, that families can't be healthy and communities aren't healthy. Providing clean water and sanitation and clean energy, all of that affects our health. If the water's dirty, if the air is dirty, that our health is going to be bad. So we've done some things. I mean, we've certainly added to our educational agenda. We have courses now in global environmental health. We have a whole track for our MPH in global environmental health. We participate in the sustainability curriculum across the university. We have hired faculty who do research in this area, people like Susan Annenberg, who's using NASA data to figure out how energy use across the planet is affecting our health and will affect it in the future, or people like Dr. Sabrina McCormick, who works on how we can do a better job, with communicating to the public who does not understand these interconnections between sustainability and health. Day to day, even though, we built a beautiful kind of world-class building, that's LEED Platinum, we're really proud of it. But in our day-to-day use of the building, is everything we do right? No, people leave things plugged in, they're overusing energy, we're using too much paper. There's so many things that we need to address in just how we do our work. And even though the school has embraced sustainability as a value that kind of underpins everything we do, we're not yet at a point where sustainability is actually, completely embedded, in the same way at home we do recycling. We're not there yet at work. And so I think we have a ways to go. And I look forward to the kind of energy that you and our other students can bring to help to inspire us to take this much further.
Great, thank you. Now, if we could hear from Dean Locke, are we doing enough, and what more could we be doing related to creating future leaders, conducting research, and leading by example?
Yeah, no, thanks, Saniya. Thanks so much for inviting me to be on this panel. Really excited to be here and with my Dean colleagues here to talk about this important work. I agree with Lynn 100%. You know, we're not doing enough. I'm actually not sure we could ever be doing enough, and I don't think we'll ever be done. I mean, the problems are so significant, you know, and so just pervasive that this is going to be, you know, take a lot of intentional effort, you know, for a very long time, and with everybody on board. And you know, and I think you're exactly right too, Saniya. And you know, the way you framed this is that, you know, we have to take a holistic approach to this. I mean, certainly with our education and our research mission, but then in our operational side as well. I mean, we need to sort of walk the walk. And when it comes to you know, achieving the sustainability goals that we really need to be pursuing for, you know, as a global community. And you know, and one of the kind of the really neat things that I've seen, so I'm still fairly new to GW. I've been here about 1.5 years now, but seeing how all those pieces fit together, seeing the way that our students you know, interact with on the research side. So, you know, get the education and research combination, and then having the university itself and its operations be sort of a living lab, you know, for our research, for these educational opportunities. And you can really kind of see all those pieces fit together. But I think the thing that, you know, more than anything that makes me really optimistic is, you know, at least in terms of what we can accomplish at GW, is just the incredible energy and passion and creativity of the GW community, starting with our students. You know, I have to say, when I first became a faculty member 20 years ago, people weren't really talking about, you know, about sustainability. We certainly weren't behaving in a very sustainable way at my previous institution. And so, you know, to have so much of the energy and the passion and just the drive, you know, come from the young people around us, really saying, hey, y'all really messed this place up. You know, you need to be a part of affecting change. And so I love the way that our students are really becoming leaders around this. And some of our younger faculty too. I mean, they're coming in with ideas for research, for education, for our operations. That's really kind of pushing us forward. And I just love to see that kind of energy coming from people who, you know, who really are going to be, you know, first of all, going to be on this planet longer than I am, and that really are going to be, you know, helping to provide that kind of drive that we need as an institution. And so it really, I mean, it's been exciting for me to learn about all the different things. I mean, Saniya, I mean, gosh, I mean, learning from you all about all of your activities and in all of these angles, and thinking about energy innovation and how that isn't just an engineering endeavor. That's something that connects to policy and business and law and health and issues of equity. The course that you co-created with your colleague in the business school, Anna Helm, you know, looking at international business of sustainable energy. I mean, it's these types of holistic assessments and approaches that we, as a comprehensive, you know, global preeminent research university, we can really be leaders. And so I think we've only just begun really with a lot of these kinds of efforts, but I think with the energy, the ideas, and kind of the momentum that we're building here, we can really accomplish quite a lot.
Thanks for the plug for the class. The students for the class are actually attending, so.
Oh, great. So I can't wait to hear about how it goes.
I will let you know. So Dean Matthew, I would wonder if you could give some input on how GW is addressing the way we prepare future leaders, conduct research, and lead by example related to sustainability. Are we doing enough, or what more could we be doing?
Saniya, I really appreciate you asking me. As Dean Locke said, he's been here 1.5 years. I haven't been here half a year yet. So I can't say whether we're doing enough or not. I'm going to defer to my colleagues who I trust, who are saying that no, we're not. And instead of passing judgment quite so quickly, I will suggest two ways in which we could do more because I am of the opinion that no university is doing enough in the two regards I'd like to suggest. One, in my view, the role of higher education has been extractive in communities for hundreds of years. And the paradigmatic model is extractive research, where we go out into communities and we take polls and we take surveys and we take data, we march back into our ivy towers and we produce papers and have conferences where we talk to one another, but we have not left a tangible value, a tangible benefit in the communities of which we are a part. I think if that changes, we will change inequality around the country in all of the major research university venues in the country. If you think, of course, about our relationship between GW and Washington, DC, we sit amidst some of the greatest inequality and inequity in the entire country from a health perspective, which is my area of expertise. But we are not alone in this regard. When you think of any top 10 R1 research university, the same is true. Yale is in New Haven, Columbia is in Harlem, Chapel Hill and Duke is in Durham, on and on and on. There is an extractive relationship amongst universities and their communities. This is a shame, but it's also an opportunity. As we enter our third century, it seems to me a really important opportunity that we might consider as a community to contribute to building a beloved community, to echo Martin Luther King's phrase, and to perhaps work across our great university and our great disciplines to collaborate to make us an anchor institution that contributes to equality in the community in which we sit. Secondly, I know that the law school has not yet done enough because in my view, the area that I think most about with respect to sustainability is environmental justice, right? And there are some fabulous scholars at GW Law. Two that come to mind immediately are Emily Hammond and Rob Glicksman, and they, like I, would define environmental justice as a principle that all people in communities are entitled to equal protection of the environment and equal protection of laws, equal protection of processes, equal protection of regulations. We in the law school at GW, I think, are standing at a new juncture where we are ready to reach across the university and collaborate with the School of Public Health, Dean Goldman, and her fabulous colleagues who are doing so much already in the community with your wonderful faculty. And this is, of course, how I met you with Dean Locke. But the law school could do more to bring shovel-ready policies, to bring law interventions in order to make the research that is being done in other parts of the university more meaningful and more powerful in pursuing equity in the communities in which we sit.
Wonderful, thank you for that perspective. I am going to pose another question, but I'm going to take this opportunity to let the attendees know that you can put a question into the chat or the Q&A, and the organizers are going to make sure that those questions get to me so that I can ask your questions, which are the most important. So while you take the time to do that, I am going to ask some follow-up questions of our panelists. I do appreciate some of the examples that you gave of what's going on in your schools already. I want to give you an opportunity to highlight some of the most impactful academic programs and research initiatives that are coming out of your schools in the area of sustainability. So we heard a couple of them, but I know that the schools are very active in these areas, and I want to give you the forum to be able to talk about those and highlight those. And if you could, connect that to how people can get involved, how members of the community, how the key stakeholders, how students can get involved in these ongoing programs and initiatives that you have.
Well, maybe I'll lead off again, and thank you for the question, Saniya. I think that we are most excited right now about the expansion of some of our educational opportunities, and especially that we have not only an MPH track in global environmental health that goes to many of these issues. A lot of the courses are also courses that count for the sustainability minor for the university, which we love to participate in. But we also now have a global environmental health track in our MPH at GW program. And our online MPH program actually reaches hundreds of people from across the world. And so it's exciting to be having the opportunity to teach this on the world stage and to be able to bring what we're able to do in research as well as in practice to others across the world. The other thing that I'd mention is that actually many of us have become very, very engaged in this issue in our work that we do outside of the university. One thing that we do in public health is that we're involved in a lot of the practice of public health, the service in the community. So I am now a co-chair of the special interest group on climate and health for the National Academy of Medicine. And that's exciting to see the health leadership from across the country coming together around this issue. Tells me that we've hit a point where this issue about climate change and health has become one that is widely recognized by the thought leaders in our profession. And I think this means that it's a good time for students to go into this area, because this is a field I think that's going to be burgeoning. And as a piece of that, what I'm seeing is the engagement of not only my colleagues, other more senior people, in medicine and health, but also students on a national level, how students are coming together, and not only around divestment, which our students did, and our students made a huge impact on this institution in terms of, I saw it year after year raising this issue until the board was listening. The board set up a corporate social responsibility committee. The board decided to do divestment. The students, and it's really a kind of a half of a generation of students who did that. But now I see the students across the country getting together to think, what can they do? Is it through communications? Is it through their research? Is it through their studies? Is it through activism and advocacy? All of those things make a difference. And then what can we as faculty, as academic leaders do to help to support that? It's one of the most exciting things I think that we have before us right now.
It's interesting. As I was preparing for this panel and I wanted to sort of pull my notes together of all the different things that I know is going on around seas, I realized we really need a much better way to pull all this together so that people know what's going on and know how to get involved. It almost kind of feels like a maze to try to discover all the different things that are happening here. And I think that the work that is being done by the sustainability leaders on campus is really critical, just to make people aware of what's happening. And some of the things that I think are really exciting, kind of follow up on Dean Goldman's point, is the way that we provide opportunities for our students to really get involved. Again, I keep talking about, back in my day, when I was an engineering student, we solved equations, maybe did an experiment in a lab, and that was about it. And now, here at GW, our engineering students are, they go out into the world. I mean, they came to GW because they wanted to be at an institution that was engaged with the community, and taking advantage of all the opportunities, that being in DC affords us. And, thinking about, whether it's getting involved in undergraduate research projects, design project, we have our departments actually partner with companies and government agencies all around DC so that our students can have, these experiential opportunities through design projects and things like that that tackle real world issues like and sustainability is like a theme. And I feel like in at least half of these projects. I mean, so your Saniya's department of mechanical and aerospace engineering, working with engineering management and systems engineering around a senior design team that's working with MC Dean here in DC around looking at building efficiency, projects for that and how engineering can be brought to bear on those kinds of things. When I think about the other kinds of research projects that that we have going on that are sort of getting driven by the enthusiasm and the creativity of our students and our faculty, having the wonderful support of like the Duke Energy Innovation Fund that has specifically been set up to support interdisciplinary approaches to innovation in energy, obviously a critical part of sustainability. I've been so excited about what Frank Sesno and his team are doing around Planet Forward and really making it so that the kind of work that's being done at universities can be put within that context of the real world. So as our students are doing that work, they really get connected to the those real world challenges, and then have a forum to put their ideas out there. And so it really is all these different things we have going on. And for me, like, I think part of the work I need to do as Dean of Cs is to pull them together so that our students and the public know about all of those exciting opportunities and how they might get involved.
Well, first, before I start saying the things that we are planning to do at the law school, I want to acknowledge that there are many, many things going on around the university that are already outreach, are already having a tangible effect. And I don't want to shortchange those. I can think of so many, but two that come to mind already are the Center for Community Resilience that's directed by Wendy Ellis, the Rodman Institute that's directed by GDL Bayumi, and so many others that are dealing with health disparities right here in the DC area. The law school is planning to be a bigger player in this arena and do a better job. Now, again, the law school has been really active in outreach in criminal law, very active in public service and data sciences. But now I am hoping to build an equity institute at the law school that will begin to place law in the center of conversations about environmental justice and about health justice, about economic justice. In this way, we may be, in fact, able to build an environmental justice clinic to work with the EPA and move Title VI cases that address discrimination in overly burdened communities. In this way, we might also be able to build a medical legal partnership that would address the processes under Title VI that are very often disregarded and very slow to proceed through the Title VI compliance enforcement offices at the EPA. These are ways in which, if the Equity Institute is successful in partnering across campus, then bringing law and enforcement of anti-discrimination law will help with addressing environmental injustices, both here and around the country.
If I may tag onto that, because I think that's such an important point, and that is that we must do this work as a university in a way that doesn't set up a dichotomy between actions taken to prevent climate change and actions taken to promote health equity and environmental justice. And too often what we have seen is a willingness to do trade-offs where we're reducing, say, carbon and other pollution, but we're doing it in a way that we're not benefiting the communities that are most highly exposed. And at times even pushing more of the pollution into those communities. And that is one of the things that can be a really unfortunate outcome of policies that don't take into account equity and place equity right in the center, justice right in the center of those policies. And I mean, if you go back again, to the Sustainable Development Goals, equity is right in the middle of that. And that if that isn't the guiding star, you can end up yes, providing perhaps some benefit for all, but it can't be at the expense that there are some who are less healthy because of what you did. And so I very much support the institute that Dayna is setting up. We're involved on the environmental justice side, as well as Dr. Ellis's community resilience work. And it is just so key, again, to how we're moving forward with any kind of sustainability agenda.
Saniya,
Yeah, I agree with that. So go ahead, Dayna.
No, you go ahead, John. I'm gonna follow you. Now we've got a conversation, and poor Saniya will get no more questions.
Yeah, no, I just couldn't agree with this more. I mean, that's been one of the things that for me has been so inspiring in the conversations that we've been having around the campus on these topics is that this all relates to issues of equity, and it's a global issue as well. Thinking about some of the leaders in our Elliott School for International Affairs and talking about the concept of climate refugees, related to sea level rise or other forms of pollution, et cetera. And I mean, it just is incredible when you start thinking about this scale at which this is going to affect entire communities, entire countries, entire groups of people, and it just that has to be something that's front and center through all these discussions. And and again, it's a big part of what we talk about in the engineering school. It's you can work on this technology, but it's this technology within this broader context, and equity is really at the forefront of that context.
So Saniya, I want to see if I can be a little bit provocative, because that's what we do at the law school, and just add a layer of inquiry on the wonderful comments that my colleagues are making. Both Dean Goldman and Dean Lach have been so supportive in forming this Equity Institute. But I want to suggest two things. One, when we do get law involved in the conversation, when the law school really does come out of its silo and into collaboration with the research and the work that's being done, we can come up with some pretty provocative ways to implement and achieve equity. If you haven't read it, Maxine Burkett has an article on climate reparations. So we can talk about the need to put equity right in the center of the Sustainable Development Goals, to put it right in the middle of the equity, the environmental justice cause and research. And we can add, in addition to that, laws which actually implement reparations for climate disequilibrium that is historic. We can actually focus specifically on the issue of race. And one of the things that I hope this Equity Institute will do is cure a common malady, which is to speak about equity problems without focusing specifically on race and racism. There is a theory by Joe Link and Bruce Phelan. Link and Phelan a long time ago came up with a theory called fundamental cause. And fundamental cause theory is intricate and far beyond the scope of this panel, but the most important point I'd like to bring out from fundamental cause, if you have interest, Link and Phelan has a 2015 article naming racism as a fundamental cause of public health disparities. And that is true with respect to environmentally related disparities. Why? Because when we fix disparities without specifically aiming at racial inequity, we actually exacerbate that inequity. We make it worse. The solution comes at the expense of equity if race is not targeted and racism is not targeted specifically. The most poignant example that I can give you right now is the vaccine that we are distributing for COVID-19. We are all aware of the disproportionate morbidity and mortality that African Americans, Native Americans, and Latinx Americans are experiencing. So far in the rollout, those populations are woefully underrepresented in receiving the vaccine. Why? Because we have not got enough jurisdictions specifically targeting by race vulnerable populations. So therein lies an example of solutions that, if not very intentionally and deliberately aimed at racial and racism as a source of inequity, will actually make matters worse.
Well, Dayna, I think, it's probably a subject, for a much longer conversation, but, the issues are extremely complex because it is true that racism itself, I mean, I think of it as a toxin. I think of it as a toxin that is synergistic with other kinds of toxins, in the environment, including the virus itself, because those who become infected who are Black are much more likely to wind up in the hospital or die. And because of other underlying health problems that are caused by racism, the prevalence of chronic disease that we see in communities, and we can trace these back to these roots, and including the environmental, the fact that there's pollution in so many of the Black communities. But there's also, I think, the toxic effects of the Tuskegee experiment and other historic events that maybe when I was growing up, I wasn't so aware of. I learned about it in public health school, but the Centers for Disease Control itself conducted a syphilis experiment on Black prisoners. They had no choice in the matter, infecting them, just watching them get sick and sicker and die to learn about the disease. Extremely unethical, could never happen today, but it did happen. It happened during my lifetime, and I didn't know about it. But my friends in the Black community did know about it because there's different media, there's different channels of communication. And are they right to distrust public health researchers? Yes, they are. They're very right to have that distrust. And that is another piece of it. And so I think that we have a lot of toxicity, whether it's the racism or it is the burden of some of these past injustices that I don't know what reparations were done for that. I really doubt that there were any. I don't think we've done reparations for the Inuit villages that have been sliding into the Alaskan Sea. I don't think we've done reparations for the coastal South Carolina towns that are flooding out and having to move inland. And so I look forward. I think we could work together on that. I think that the legal tools are tools. I think you may need our science, to be able to quantitate what this
without question. Without question.
By the biological information. You might need the engineering school to be able to talk about, how that really had to do, with the change in sea level, I mean, I think
we do.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I appreciated, Dean Matthew, the deeper level of inquiry that you offered, because I think that there's an opportunity to move beyond, how do we make up for what we did? But I think what you were getting at with reparations, you hit on something that is, how do we use energy and environment action as an equity enabler? Not how do we just fix or prevent something from happening, but how do we leverage it as a tool? And I think that that's a conversation we've been having at GW, and I'm excited to see where we go with that. I'm excited to hear all the deans recognize that and the role that we can play there. I wanted to go to one of our audience questions. We have a question that I'm just going to go ahead and read the question. How are the deans thinking about the role of corporate donations to academic initiatives, considering the well-documented, whoops, sorry, that just disappeared in front of me. So I will move on to the next question that got disappeared in front of me. I'm sorry about that. So there we have another question that actually each
Sorry, it's Megan. If you just go to the answered column, you should be able to see it.
I see. Thank you. Thank you, Megan. All right. So I'm going to start over with that question since I didn't know where it went. I found it. So how are the deans thinking about the role of corporate donations to academic initiatives, considering the well-documented role of the fossil fuel industry and working to prevent climate action and spread disinformation?
I mean, I'll give a first approximation of that, which is that I don't want any donation that's presuming that they're getting some kind of an outcome from my faculty as a result of that donation, whether it's for fossil fuel or a medicine or anything. My faculty need to be respected as objective scientists, who pursue the truth, and to accept a donation that causes you to take a position on behalf of the donor is not truthful, and it does not reflect what I consider to be the coin of the realm, which is that we generate knowledge, not PR for companies. I don't care who the company is what I'm trying to say. That's not to say we don't take donations, but we don't take donations that are for a certain pre-prescribed outcome. We just won't do that.
Yeah, that's absolutely a critical component of our reputation as an academic institution. And as Dean Goldman said, we do work with companies. I think part of the way we can affect change is to work with companies and translate our innovation and our ideas out into the world like that. And I referenced earlier the Duke Energy Innovation Fund. I mean, Duke Energy, they have a history, right? And but with the work that they're doing with GW of really increasing the percentage of the energy that we consume based on solar, that's a positive step for this university. And the research projects that they're funding through the Innovation Fund, again, it's these interdisciplinary approaches to energy and innovation. I've looked at some of those projects, and those are forward-thinking, sustainability-driven kinds of projects. And Duke seems to be very happy with the direction that all of that is taking. And so I do think that we have to be careful, as Dean Goldman said. There's never going to be they give us money and we give them the PR they want. It needs to be honest science that we do. But by partnering with companies, we can really affect change, more, at a larger scale than if, we were just writing and publishing papers and calling it a day.
I agree with you, John, about Duke, even though they do things that I don't agree with every day. And that probably, even looking at Dayna, maybe people in the law school would even want to sue them. But the projects that they're doing with us have been very positive, and we hope that it's helping to move them in a different direction, that they aren't just greenwashing, which is, not a good thing. But and I don't think it is. I think that they recognize that they need to change. And as many people in the industry do, even while they're trying to make that change happen as slowly as possible.
On this question, I'm going to have to plead being too new to know where all of our donors are quite yet. I'm learning where the bathroom doors are still. But I do want to correct an error. I have an email that one of my colleagues sent to me. I know, Saniya, that you're an associate professor and not a student. I apologize for misspeaking.
I don't think you did. And it's not a problem. I'm going to take it as a compliment. As
well you should.
It's probably because I'm using the pretty filter on Zoom.
Oh, okay. That sounds like something I'm going to look up as soon as this call is over.
One other thing about corporations as well is that, they are the future employer of a lot of our current students. And so having, again, that kind of partnership, and I gave some examples earlier of our students doing real world projects as part of their education, their experiences, by working with companies or government agencies. And so there really can be a value add there, but again, with the disclaimer of that we need to be doing honest, objective science and making real progress on these issues and not greenwashing them, as Dean Goldman said.
Yeah, and I wonder, I'm going to step in a little bit as the moderator. I know I'm not a panelist, but I think one of the things that we do on the education side, on the teaching side, is particularly in higher education, it's our opportunity to show students that the realms that we go into, particularly in sustainability, aren't black and white, there's a lot of gray. The issues are complex, and the congressperson spoke about this at the opening of the summit. The issues are complex and they're multifactorial. And so for us to be able to tackle them, I think it requires understanding that and recognizing that, you know, a company, large or small, has many facets of what they're doing. And so I think that particularly with like the experiential education that all the schools are offering, where they get to actually engage with government and industry, students are getting the opportunity to see these sustainability challenges through different lenses, all within even just one organization. And so I think that complexity is important, and that there's not a blanket label that applies. So I think that's a part of what we do in education. I'm gonna pull off of that education thread, and I want to go back to something that all three of you actually pointed out, and I'd love to pull it out a little bit more. So Dean Goldman talked about interconnections across disciplines. Dean Locke, you talked about interdisciplinarity, work projects that people are working on that are interdisciplinary. And Dean Matthew, you talked about in particular the context of the Equity Institute. And I know that you have done this, you have involved multiple disciplines in that conversation. So I was wondering if you could talk about some of the challenges to making those interconnections and doing interdisciplinary work, working across departments and collaborating across disciplines. What are some of the challenges, and how do we go about tackling those challenges and doing that more and more effectively?
I mean, I'd say one thing is resources that the faculty want to work together across schools and departments on some of these larger things, but sometimes that requires more of a push to be able to pull everybody together and write more complex proposals and go to larger donors and with more ambitious ideas to make those things happen. And to do that, you need resources. You need people who are really good writers, good at organizing those things, time that people are brought together. They need to work together a little bit, become familiar with each other, develop common frameworks, not the same discipline, but common frameworks. And I've done this kind of work before. I've seen some of my faculty very successfully do it, but oftentimes we don't have enough, if you may, really kind of investment fund. We don't have any kind of venture fund. You know, I mean, it's the kind of thing I'd love to see donors come in with for GW, that, you know, because I think with some venture funding that we could bring faculty together to tackle some of these more complex problems, and they would win really large grants, you know, but it's hard to start that from zero. You know, you need to have a core of support to make that happen. And I'm hoping that GW can build that, because I think that's, I mean, you know yourself as a faculty member, it's there are a lot of things that you do, right, that are service, you know, to your profession, to your community, to your school. Another layer of other service, you need support to be able to add that on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really important question, and it's one that I think that we are tackling at GW. When the deans get together, these things come up all the time. We talk about all the things we want to be able to do together. How can we support them? How can we, you know, empower the faculty and the students, you know, to pursue these great things? And you know, some of it is honestly like the inertia of a 200-year-old organization like GW. You know, you get these schools, these departments set up, you know, that are based on, a lot of them are based on sort of traditional disciplines that, you know, that kind of have built up some silos, you know, frankly, over the years. And there were reasons for that historically. But, you know, again, when you really think about the grand societal challenges that we face, with sustainability being, you know, right near the top of the list, it's, you know, it requires these you know, to break these silos down. And it's, And again, like for me, like one of the things that gives me a lot of optimism about it is that our students and our younger faculty are demanding it. And as deans, we have to make it easier for them. I mean, one of the things that just hit me so hard when I first got to GW is an undergrad came up to me and said, you know, I want to be a transportation engineer. So I'm in civil engineering, but I know that if I really want to impact the world around transportation engineering, that in addition to some of the technical stuff I'm learning in civil engineering, I need to know public policy, urban planning, social justice, you know, all these other kinds of things. Like, I'm not going to be successful if I don't know those things, but how can I take those classes? Are they going to count towards my degree? Do I need to petition for them to count? And I just took that story, you know, to the civil environmental engineering department and told them, and they said, gosh, you know, yeah, we need to do something about that. That's what our students want. That's what we need to do. We're going to prepare them to be leaders going forward. And it's similar for the faculty too, where, you know, you think about sort of what's traditional forms of scholarship and evaluation for things like tenure and promotion. You know, we have very outdated models for that, for the most part in academia. You know, I think we're making some progress here at GW, but we have a long way to go in that to make just to recognize the different forms of scholarship and impact that this kind of work may take, and how are we going to value that and support that, so that our faculty can be successful in their careers. So these are tough things. And it is absolutely our responsibility as deans to, you know, to really make that easier for our faculty and our students so that they can work on these critical issues.
I only have one thing to add, and that is my gratitude, because I walked onto this campus and said, we're going to do a race institute, and all 10 deans said, I'm right with you. And the difficulties and challenges that my co-deans on this panel have identified are made smaller by the fact that we are a new set of deans, I will say, even though all of us are not brand new as I am. This is a new feeling of collaboration and a new willingness to break down silos and to make a little bit of a mess, because it's hard work, but it's so worth it.
Thank you. I'm going to move to another question. This is kind of a long question. It's asking about medicine and nursing. And so it's going to be hard for us to represent those schools on this panel. But I think that probably Dean Goldman could address kind of the broader question that's being asked of, are there many healthcare organizations that are deeply invested in making the connections between human health, human health, environmental health, and operational impact or purchasing choices? Are they investing in deep sustainability approaches? Could you give us some examples?
Well, yes, I think I can. And actually right now, I will say that what even the National Academy of Medicine is undertaking, which is that we have decided in the academies that this issue is one of our highest priorities. This is a big initiative now that we're undertaking, which is basically around the idea of, you know, can we make health and healthcare net carbon zero? Really bold. That's very bold, right? And I will say our sector does not account for a large proportion of the overall carbon emissions on the planet, but that the way that we emit carbon, I think, has profound impacts for everybody else, which is that we do it through one, just an excessive use of disposables. So whereas GW is kind of going, you know, disposable, plastic free, healthcare is so dependent on disposable plastic and other disposables, it's not even funny. But second, that there's very little attention paid to sustainability in how the healthcare sector uses energy. And, you know, our hospitals and buildings are like giant ocean liners that are just belching out pollution into the communities where we exist. And there's no reason for that. And as doctors and nurses and other healthcare providers have become aware of that. There's a whole movement across the country, and we're planning in the national academies to harness that. And I hope GW will end up being a leader in that as well, because I think that we can lead the way. And then I'm hoping, this is just a hope, that as we go net zero, and that we'll see, wait a minute, we have to impact how we're doing transportation, because all of these goods and other services and our patients are being transported in and out. And where's our electricity coming from? Just like GW has had to think about that, the healthcare system could be thinking about that, and thereby making an impact on those other sectors. Because I don't think we should just be driving in our own lane. I think that we should be trying to impact on all of that, because it has such an integral effect on our health itself. I do see lots of organizations getting into this, but I'm happy to say, one of mine is doing it. And I see from Megan, who put in the chat box, that yes, the hospital is one of the buyers of the Capital Partners Solar Project. That's 50% from offsite solar. But of course, net zero means 100% is not polluting with carbon, or that we're offsetting it all. So net zero is very bold. But
thank you for those comments. I wanted to ask kind of a high level question around what is it you as deans have, you're accountable to your faculty and students, but you also have your faculty and students as a resource. It's like this giant toolbox that you have. So how can you and how can we, as members of the community, of the schools and the university and our broader community around us, how can we leverage our strengths and our unique location? What are our key strengths? How do we leverage those? How do we leverage our unique location? What are you charging us to do?
Let me start, because mine are going to be the least chargy, given my newness here. I just want to speak in general terms, because this is a fabulous, fabulous question. This is really the question, right? And if you don't mind me taking it to sort of a very, very sort of 35,000 foot level. The question is, what are we as higher education going to do about it, about sustainability, about inequity, about all the problems? Like, what's our role? We aren't the government. We aren't private industry. We are, however, uniquely situated to really make a difference. As anchor institutions, we are larger than most purchasers. We are larger than most employers. If we are paying a living wage, then we are contributing to equity. If we are not, we are contributing to disequity. If we are using equitable contracting policies, then we are a part of the solution. If we are not, we are part of the problem. And the blessing and curse of being big is that if we act well, it makes a big difference. And if we act poorly, it makes a big difference. So as an institution, I'm charging higher education with really living up to its role as an anchor institution. As far as students are concerned, I have to say, the students aren't usually, in most institutions that I have been in, those that need charging. It is more us, the faculty, that needs charging. It is more us, the administrators, that need charging. It is those of us who are doing the hard work of protecting the fiduciary interest in the longevity of the institution that need the chargings. But I charge us with listening to our students.
You beat me to it, Dayna. That's what I was going to say too. I mean, I always tell our students and our faculty, I say, my job is to help you achieve your goals. And if I'm not doing that, I need to hear about it. And I do think, like, around these kinds of issues here, it's I gave that example of the transportation engineering student, and you could tell, with as many students as we have at GW, you could tell that many of those kinds of stories of like, they're saying, like, this is what I want to do. This is the impact impact I want to have. This is what I think I need to learn. These are the experiences I came to GW to have. And then it's our responsibility to provide that. And so it's, I think I take that as a charge, every morning when I wake up, and it's, I feel like if, it's the, and it's more than, I mean, sometimes we just need to get out of the way of like these incredible people, who have so much energy. But there are then those very real kinds of barriers that exist that we as leaders, when you start thinking about the power dynamics, there are things that we can do, as deans that students have a difficult time doing, and so we need to really be active partners, with our students, with our faculty, in helping to achieve those goals. And with as often as I hear about interests in sustainability with research, with education, with social engagement, all these things with our university operations, that's something that we need to continue to take that charge from the students, from the faculty.
So I see it very similarly to what you just heard from the other two. Our students who are interested in this area are already very impassioned about it. They're not impassioned because they hear a speech from the dean. They're impassioned because they can see what's going on around them in the world. And so how do we educate? How do we prepare them so that, as some of them have done, and I've been so proud of them, can wind up in the White House making a difference, being a part of the global climate assessment process for the federal government, or into organizations. One of my alumni has set up a new geo health group for the American Geophysical Union. Oh my God, that makes me so proud. And I think what's very important is that while they may be bringing the passion, we need to make sure they're learning the science, that they are receiving the tools that they need, including not just the scientific tools, but the communications tools, the policy tools, the capacity to be able to go into the real world and be effective. And when I see them doing that, then I'm like, that's what we're here for, because that's why they've come to us. They want to do that. I think that we also have to lead by example in terms of being truthful, being courageous about speaking truthfully, show them how to do that in a way that is also constructive. And one thing I can remember from being young is that it would be hard for me sometimes to understand that sometimes you make progress by compromising, that you don't always get 100% of what you're trying to achieve. You might get 80%, and how much better it is to get that 80% than zero. And so, also teaching about that. But most importantly, that underline what our actions should be evidence. They should be evidence, and whether it comes from, climate science, public health science, behavioral science, engineering science, wherever it comes from, that they know how to access that and that they value that. And, and especially after having an administration who placed no value on that at all, that it is especially important at this time that we're creating a model for that.
Thank you. I want to ask, I know Megan's on, there were some questions and points about how GW is actually taking action on our campus. And there is a really great sustainability scorecard that the Office of Sustainability has put together. And so I'm going to ask the organizers if they wouldn't mind putting the link in the chat for everyone, in particular for the students and the faculty who haven't seen that. This is a really great and just kind of a couple of pages and graphics to see all that GW is doing and get an understanding of how GW is walking the walk, in addition to all these academics talking the talk. So I see a question, and I think this will probably be our final question. what is one of the most impactful, personally or societally impactful changes you tried to make in your career? And what did you learn from that?
I'll go because it brought me to GW. I was a legal academic for more decades than I'm going to admit. And it's a rich and rewarding career. When I publish, I get to go to conferences and talk to other academics, and the academics in the law are very interesting and exciting. But in 2016, I made the decision to pivot from doing law only, but law and policy as well. This was actually a hard pivot for me, I'm sorry to say, because the institutions I went to really did not value policy work. But I think I got old enough that I finally said, what do I want the rest of my life to be about? And when I made that decision, I spent a year at the EPA. And I did that under an IPA agreement with my, it wasn't quite a full year, but with my institution, with my law school, and it changed everything. I was in the Office of Civil Rights. Who knew the EPA had an Office of Civil Rights, right? The EPA doesn't know that they have an Office of Civil Rights sometimes, it seems. I made the deal with my husband, who is a wonderful man. I would be only there for a year. But when I realized that law was much more useful in DC than it had been in the Rocky Mountains, I asked for a second year, and I haven't looked back. So deciding to add policy to my toolkit.
Well, and I hate to say this, but a pivotal time in my life was also going to EPA. So many years before Dayna did, and in a different context, taking on actually a role there as assistant administrator regulating pesticides and toxic chemicals. And I would say that was because it was extremely risky. It was a political position. I wasn't bucking for that position. I didn't really know about it. And it is a very challenging position because it's an extremely complex area scientifically, but an opportunity, as Dayna found at EPA, to make an impact on the nation. And so that I decided to risk it, and it was worth it. And the only sad thing is that I couldn't do that forever. And it's certainly was a high point in my life, until I came to GW, which is, the current high point in my life. But and I wouldn't say that the only way that you can do that is by, going to a federal agency like EPA. But I can say that there's a lot to be said for having some time doing public service if you're interested, in changing the world around issues like sustainability and justice. You can't have a better way to learn, aside from, of course, getting an education at GW. So
this is a really, really great question. I'm going to have some, I'm going to after the panel, I'm going to come up with a whole bunch of other answers to this. I should reflect on such things more often. The thing that comes to mind is something that is very recent. Over the past year or so, I've had a lot of very deep and personal conversations with our students of color in the engineering school, and really listening about their experiences and some of the challenges they have, and just how they feel, about students and students in our school and the opportunities they have or don't have, and we've really started to identify some big changes that we need to make, fundamental changes in promoting a culture of equity and inclusion in our school. And it's going to be a lot of work. I mean, talking about one of those things, again, like we said at the beginning, we could, we're not doing enough. We probably can never do enough. And we got to be, persistent and intentional, and relentless in this. And so, so many issues, have come up in these discussions, everything from financial aid to, GPA requirements that cut off opportunities for our students, and, so many of these kinds of things. And, as I try to reflect on this question, like if I think it's, as I look at the enormity of some of these challenges, I think it might be, the most important thing I've ever taken on. And so it's going to really be, so I don't have an outcome to describe for that yet. Call me back in a couple of years, and hopefully we have made some progress there. But again, it's something that comes from the energy, the ideas, of our students and our faculty who are really passionate on these issues. And as my dean colleagues said before, like the first step in progress, and that was for me to sit and listen to them and really try to understand what their experiences are in our school.
So Saniya, what occurs to me as a common thread is that none of us sat down 20 years ahead of time and said, this is what I'm going to do in 2021 or 2020 or whenever it was. And my students tend to do that. They're thinking way far ahead and making plans. I want to be a leader, and therefore I want to check the following boxes. But actually, sometimes leadership involves the ability to pivot and to do something that maybe it involves taking a risk, because it's not something that it's in your comfort zone. Whether it's Dayna going to the EPA or the work that John described. I'm sure 10 years ago, if I told him he was going to do that, he would have thought I was crazy. And I think, being willing to jump in and take a risk, I think is really important. That's when you grow, when you're stretching beyond your little envelope.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I'm actually going to pull that thread out of what you all three said, and highlight that I've done something the same. That is so important, I think, for students to hear, that there's not this set path. Even though you may kind of come into college thinking like this is the way to do it, what we recognize over the course of a career is that's not true. And to listen to, as cheesy as it sounds, to listen to the inner voice, and listen to what the world around you is telling you, I think is important. So I did something similar. I mean, I was kind of all set to go and get a PhD in engineering, and really thought that I had to do something related to service, and service in education. And so I left graduate school in engineering and became a public high school teacher in DC. It was actually the first time I lived in DC. And at the time, everyone except my now husband told me I was crazy. Why would you turn down PhD fellowships, multiple PhD fellowships to top institutions around the world? Why would you turn that down to go teach high school in inner city DC? But I can say that, so at the time, I got a lot of pushback from a lot of people, but that experience forever imprinted on me what I will work towards when it comes to equity. And I'm an engineer. I mean, I am an engineer, and I went and got that PhD in engineering, but it will forever impact the way I think about educational equity and what I know that we need to keep striving to do. And so I hope that students in particular are taking that away from this conversation, this last question and the whole conversation about what we're trying to do. Listen to what it is that you want to do, and keep trying to do that, and hold us accountable if you see us straying. So I want to thank the deans for joining us and providing such a rich conversation. So Dean Matthew, Dean Locke, Dean Goldman, thank you so much for this, and thank you for the attendees, and hopefully folks will stay for the next panel on energy innovation. I know that I'm excited for that.
Thank you for having us. This was wonderful.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.